non-parametric tests. So before getting into a parametric or non-parametric test, so what is the need? What is the purpose of doing the research, and what is the basic idea? The basic idea is to get the statistical inference, especially if you are going for a research. So where we have to identify whether the test is should be in a parametric or in a non-parametric. So the statistical inference normally it comes in two different platforms. One is theory of estimation, and another one is testing of hypothesis. So the theory of estimation, it requires only the point of estimation and then interval estimation and so on, and it is very easy for a researcher to choose and to identify and as well as to make an analysis. But in case of hypothesis testing, so if you are going to test the hypothesis, so before that we should know what is the hypothesis. Hypothesis is it is a tentative statement or a temporary statement. Normally, so it is a statement which has to be proved in the future. So how we are going to prove? We are going to prove through the research work or with the help of some statistical tool, which we are going to prove whether hypothesis is accepted or rejected. That is the null hypothesis H0, alternate hypothesis H1, whether the null is accepted or rejected. So these are all the things which usually we have to go for a research. So whenever we are going for testing a hypothesis, we should have only either a parametric or non-parametric test. So we have to either go with the parametric test or non-parametric test. So what is a parametric test? And how can you identify whether the information should be parametric or it is from a normal distribution or normal, not in a normal distribution, or is it parametric one or is it one? So how can you identify it? So there are certain things which we have to follow, and with that we can identify whether the parametric test is more suitable for our research or non-parametric test is more suitable. Which one is more suitable, and as well as which will give a better result, and the applicability is more important, especially in case of research. Okay, and what is a parametric test? A parametric test are those that make assumptions about the parameters of population distribution from the sample is drawn. So what is a population distribution? Normally it is called it must be a data of a normal distribution. So the normal distribution we have studied in school days, even in statistics, that is a kind of a bell-shaped curve you could see, and it is a symmetric curve, and everything towards the mean. And that is what the parametric test, that is an assumption about the parameters of a population distribution, especially the sample which has been drawn from the population, and it must be a definite one, and there must be a mean, there must be a standard deviation, and this kind of data and this kind of magnitudable data is called a parametric, and especially the normal distribution or the population is normally distributed and everything can move towards the mean. And then the non-parametric test. What is a non-parametric test? It is a distribution tree. We cannot find a normal distribution, and even it may be a symmetric, but it may not be a normal distribution. And these data and these information, which are all will come under the category of non-parametric test. So only you have to use the non-parametric tests to make an analysis. So that is what the major. Okay, and when to use a statistical test, whether parametric or a non-parametric. So where we have to use a parametric and where we have to use a non-parametric test. And these are all the basic idea and basic method to identify whether the data is applicable for parametric or non-parametric. It simply says there are a scaling measure. It is one among the various stages. The very first stage is we have to go with the scaling. So what is scaling? Scale in the sense we are putting some measure, especially on the data. The first one is a nominal scale, ordinal scale, interval scale, and ratio scale. There are 4 different scales. So what is a nominal scale? people or objects with the same scale value or the same on some attribute. The values of the scale have no numeric meaning in the way that you usually think about the numbers. So no numeric value. What is no numeric value? There is no magnitude in it. So that is what no numeric value. The values of a scale have no numeric value meaning in the way that you usually think about the numbers. So nominal scale, what is a nominal scale? We have studied the scaling techniques. So scaling techniques, especially if you are going to prepare a questionnaire or an interview schedule, you will pick some scales. Especially if you are going to ask a question regarding the gender of respondent. So if he is a male or she is a female, so you will put the number is 1 for a male and you put number for 2 for a female. So the total count of 1 and the total count of 2, it is just a number and it does not contain any value. You cannot think that a female it is being represented by 2, so it is somehow more than a male because it is being represented by 1. So it is not like that. It is just a numerical representation. Apart from that, the number which you are putting that will not give or will not make any value. Okay, so that is what a nominal scale. Marital status, the same. So whether you have got married or not. So married in the sense they will go for a yes. So if you put yes, it is being marked as 1, and if you put no, it is being marked as 2. So the same being followed. So that is an example of defining an attribute. So attribute, so it means a kind of a nominal scale. So where you are putting a nominal scale, that is for a gender, marital status, and some other examples we can give. Okay. So, and then the second scale is an ordinal scale. Ordinal scale, it is a kind of a data where the rank or order the observations are scored or the categories from a low to high in terms of more or less. Especially you can fix an educational qualification. Educational qualification, normally we used to go for a questionnaire that is illiterate people, higher secondary, up to higher secondary, up to undergraduation and post graduation and above post graduation. So likewise, we used to put different questions, and for each question, you will pick some scale. That is, in case of illiterate, it is being marked as 1, and being in up to high school, higher secondary school, is being marked as 2, and if it is undergraduate, it is being marked as 3, 4, 5. So how many numbers of 5 are there? How many numbers of 3 are there? How many 4s are there? How many 2s are there? So it is being evaluated. It is just because of the ranking or an order of observation, or even in sometimes you will be asked to give your marks, especially for your kind of, you can say the example of internet facility. So can you please rank the internet provider and its satisfaction out of 5? You have to give a rank. I'll give Airtel as 1, Vodafone as 2, Jio as 3, and this is what the ranking. So even that kind of a ranking is also called an ordinal ranking. An ordinal scale, it is a kind of where people or objects with higher scale value have more some attribute, more of some attribute, and the intervals between the adjacent scale values are interminate, and the scale assigned by the property of a greater than or equal or less than. So like that, in case of any scale being adjusted, it is greater than this value or equal to that particular value or less than that. So these are all being considered as an ordinal scale. And the first two scales, the nominal and ordinal scales, are considered as a non-parametric because these two scales are being used wherever you are going to assess for a qualitative measures. Qualitative measures, you cannot get it directly. If it is a qualitative aspect or a satisfaction, a perception, or something like that, so you cannot get any direct score. You are going to convert the qualitative into a quantitative one. And for third sake, we are asking for the different scales, nominal scale and ordinal scale. So both the scales are being used for a qualitative data. So if you are getting a qualitative data, it is being used only with the help of nominal and ordinal scales. And the next two scales is interval and ratio scale. Interval and ratio scale. What is an interval scale? It is an observation in terms of fixed unit of measurement. For example, there I have given a measure of temperature. What is Fahrenheit? What is Celsius? 40 degrees Celsius, 30 degrees Celsius, and exact temperature. And if you ask the person what is your salary, he will say 50,000, 40,000 per month or per annum. So they will say exact salary, what is the amount which they are getting. So that is what the kind of an interval scale. Even there may be a kind of a difference, the difference between 8 and 9, or same the difference between 70 to 80. So there must be a gap. The interval between the adjacent scale values are equal with the respective attribute, and it is being measured. So the interval scale, especially the observations, it should be in terms of a fixed unit of measurement, and only then it will reflect the exact information, the exact data. If you ask the age of a person, they will tell I'm a 30s, or I'm a 25, I'm a 27. So you are collecting out of 50 members, they are collecting all those people's ages. So that is a kind of an interval scale. And the lowest scale, that is a ratio scale. The ratio scale, it is the ratio is a rational and as well as a 0 point for the scale. So where you can get an absolute zero, and the ratios are equivalent, and the ratios of 2 to 1 is the same as the ratio of 8 to 4, and the ratios are a kind of a fundamental 0 point oriented scales. Okay. Example, the same age and the income, exact income, if you are asking an exact income, and these are all a kind of a quantitative data. Quantitative data are being measured with the help of interval and ratio scale. And if it is a qualitative one, you have to collect it only from a nominal and ordinal scale. And the data which are being collected, nominal and ordinal, are being used in a non-parametric test only. And the interval and the ratio scale, especially the data which are being collected through interval and ratio scale, are being used in a parametric test. And not only the scale of measurement, not just by the scale of measurement, we are going to check whether the test is being parametric or non-parametric. So it is not like that. And there are a few more points which we have to check whether to get confirmed whether the test is most appropriate, or it will give accurate result without any errors. So that is why we have to go for a further analysis, a further investigation. So what are all the further investigations? Okay. And in addition to the scale of measurement, we should look at the population distribution. So what is the population distribution? That is what we have initially discussed. That is, it must be a normal distribution, and the population is normally distributed, and you can usually use the parametric test. And if it is not normally distributed population, or no assumption can be made about the population distribution. So there is no assumption towards the census or the population. So you cannot go for a parametric. We have to go only with the non-parametric test. And the normal distribution, we already discussed normal distribution. Normal distribution is a proper term of probability, a bulk curve. It is a well-shaped curve and a skewed, and a very common continuous probability distribution. And all normal distributions are symmetric, but not all are symmetric or not a normal distribution. Okay. And use the parametric test, we have to check the three major aspects. Number one, the data are being collected in an interval or ratio scale. So if it is interval or ratio data, if it is required or it is being collected, and the normal distribution is required. If it is from sample is being from distributed in a normal distribution, from the population, and also we have to check the homogeneity of variance. If you are collecting the data from the different groups of the same population, so it must be a homogeneous one. The variance, the variance should be similar. So that is why we have to go for a parametric test. So these three are the major aspects which we have to discuss: kind of a scaling, and whether it has fulfilled a normal distribution, or whether it has given a homogeneity of variance. So only then we can go for a parametric test, so that it will give a more accurate results. And what is homogeneity of variance? The variance is a measure of dispersion of a random variable above the mean. And in other words, it indicates how far the values are spread. Values are being spread, it always move towards the mean. And but however, the dispersion should be there. But it is being measured in the standard deviation, and variance are being calculated. But it refers that the variance within each population is equal. And homogeneity of variance is assessed by different tests. There is a T test, and ANOVA's Levin's test are being used. Okay, there is being an example being given. So homogeneity of variance is being assessed, and the important thing is we have to go for a homogeneity of variance. We have to check whether the data, whether the variance of different groups, you may have two different groups, four different groups, or even up to 9 groups which I have to go for it. And one more point, previously we used to go for the numbers, population strength and the sample size are being used to decide whether to go for a parametric or a non-parametric. And those days we used to fix it at 30 as a number, 30, if it is above 30, or if it is below 30. And very recently it comes 16, and some tools are it is being changed. The number being changed. So, but it is a common method. These three are the common method. Number one, scaling and homogeneity of variances, and the normality, that is the normal distribution. The distribution is normal from the population. Okay. And the parametric, where we are going to determine whether it is a parametric. In case where the data which are measured by interval or ratio scale come from a normal distribution, and population variance are equal, and the parametric. In case where the data is nominal or ordinal, the assumptions of a parametric test are inappropriate. We cannot have an appropriate assumptions, and where we have to go for a non-parametric test. And this is the point which we have to determine whether to go for a parametric or non-parametric test, either a qualitative or a quantitative. And again, it is being graphed like this. First, we have to assess the data. So, whether the data is a kind of metric in the sense it is having some magnitude, it is having some values on the data which is being provided, and categorical test. And if it is not like that, we can simply go for non-parametric. And even if it is a metric, whether it is being approximately a normally distributed one. So if yes, we can further move, but if no, we can go for a non-parametric test. So again, we have to go for another checking. Or the variances of a population are equal. That is the homogeneity of variance. If yes, we can go for a parametric test. If no, we can go for a non-parametric test. Is it clear? Oh, there is no response. So this is called. Okay, are you able to follow me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And the first one is we have to check the data, and second one is we have to check the distribution, and third one is we have to check the homogeneity. And then only we can go for a decision making process, whether to go for a parametric and non-parametric test. And these are all the different characteristics of a parametric and non-parametric. So normally the parametric analysis is to test the group means, and the non-parametric analysis is to test the medians, the exact medians. So how it has been classified. And the mean, it is a kind of a data which is having some values in it. That is which is being connected with the standard deviation and distributed in a distributed from the population, and these are all possible in this case. And information about the population is completely known in case of a parametric. If you are going to assess a particular group, an employee is in a particular college, an employee is in a particular factory, or students of a particular school, so you can get the population, especially the information about the population, it is completely known. But in case of a non-parametric, it is not like that. No information about the population is available, or not up to the requirement. The information may not be a sound one. And specific assumptions are made regarding the population. You can specifically assume that if I randomly choose a particular person, he would be a qualified one. And the like, you can go for a specific assumption. You can make in case of a parametric test, but there is no specific assumption. No assumptions are made regarding the population, and applicable only for variables. If you are having a variables in the sense the data, especially the numbers which is having some numeric value, that is a kind of magnitudable data, like what we discussed, age, income, income in the sense the exact income, and the temperature of a room, and different aspects, different information, and the information, especially the numeric representation, and it has contains some value, which are all being considered as a variable, okay, and applicable only for variable, and applicable both variable and as well as attributes. So attributes in the sense a kind of opinion or a kind of a scaling, where the people, if you can say your satisfaction only by giving a rating. Nowadays we are all shopping in Flipkart, Amazon, where they will ask the ratings. So they kindly give you reviews. Out of a 5-star, what is the rate you are going to give? I'm going to give a 4-star or 3 stars or even 5 stars. So that is what an attitude. So the attitudes are being measured in a non-parametric way, and samples are independent. Samples are independent. It does not going to disturb others. Okay, but the outliers will not influence anything. Outliers in the sense, if you are exclude or include certain things, it will not going to influence it. But here it is not like that. Not necessarily the sample or independent. It may be a dependent. Okay. These are all the different properties or characteristics of a parametric and non-parametric, and assumed as a normal distribution, and there is no assumed normal distribution, and handles interval data and ratio data, again what we discussed, and handles ordinal data and nominal data, that is a rank data, and the results can significantly affect the outliers. That is what I discussed, I said now. And outliers, if you are include or exclude or something like that, and it will not affect your result. But the result, sorry, if you are including something or if you are excluding some information, and it will affect the result in case of a parametric test. But in a non-parametric, it won't get affected. The outliers will not get affected, seriously affect the result, and it perform well when spread of each group is different and might not provide a valid result if the groups have a same spread. And it performs when the spread of each group is same, might not provide a valid result if the groups have different spread, and have more statistical power. The parametrics are a more reliable one, but it is not so powerful like parametric tests. And these are all the few examples of parametric test, that is for means, and parametric test for non-parametric test for medians, sample t test, one sample and two sample t test, one weight test, ANOVA. Here you can go for a Wilcoxon, Mann-Whitney, Crystal Valleys, and Friedman test. These are all the tests which we can use for you can use it aspects. So with that, we can identify first while you are going to framing the hypothesis. So whenever you are going to framing a hypothesis, first we have to decide whether the data is available, or which you are going to collect it in a parametric scale or non-parametric, either in a qualitative one or quantitative data are available. So based on the data which is available to you, we can choose whether we have to go with the parametric and non-parametric test. So only then we can identify. So in situations, the practical data may be a non-normal, and or it may not be possible to estimate the parameters of the data, and where we have to go for a non-parametric test, and the test which is used to such a situation. And the non-parametric tests or distribution-free tests especially the qualitative data like greater or less or ordinal data, ranked data. These are all being measured in a non-parametric test, and it requires very less calculation, and there is no need to compute the parameters. And chi-square is also a kind of non-parametric test. Chi-square test for two independent samples, and Mann-Whitney's test, and these are all the different tests under the category of a non-parametric test. Okay. There are so many tests, only a few examples are being given here, and depends on the data and depends on the requirement. We have to choose an appropriate test. So which one is most suitable and which is going to give an appropriate result for us. Okay.